Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today, we're going to talk about Philip of France and his feud with the Templars. Usually, it's just me, but today I have my friend Eric with me. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Christina.
Are you excited to talk about the Templars?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you know
It's
much
been a
about
while.
them?
I don't know if I can say I know a lot about them. I'm very familiar with them, um, and not just through pop culture, but I remember studying them in college and
Yeah.
in high school and stuff.
Okay, well, King Philip IV had become King of France in 1285 when he was just 17. He had entered his reign in a fairly healthy, thriving royal family. He had been the spare. He had an older brother, and then there was him, and then he had two younger brothers as well. And his older brother died when he was 12. He may have been poisoned by his stepmother. And so Philip became the heir. But he had two younger brothers. Like, the royal family was not in danger of losing male heirs.
It's good to have a spare.
Yeah, and a spare to spare. He followed his crowning by having 7 children of his own with his wife slash foster sister. That's all in Joan of Navarre's episode, but it's all awkward. And 4 of those 7 children survived their childhood all the way to adulthood. So 3 boys and 1 girl. The Knights Templar were kind of changing their brand at this time. They had been knights dedicated to God, and their job had been to protect the Crusaders when the Crusaders went east to fight in the Crusades. But the popularity of the Crusades was going down. It wasn't a good look. People were like, maybe we don't do that anymore. And so the Templars needed rebranding. And they were still Knights of God, but they'd acquired a lot of money safeguarding Jerusalem, and they were going to go into banking.
And so this would have been after they had, after their final taking of Jerusalem, after the final time they
Yeah,
lost Jerusalem.
there's been a lot of fighting off and on over the hundreds and hundreds of years, but this is when the Crusades it's not in fashion anymore to go crusading. It's like,
It's passe.
yeah, it's very out of style now. Like, maybe a couple people who are really diehard will still do it, but it's not really the thing. So they were going to go into banking, and that's ironic. Or maybe you could probably a better word would be hypocritical, because the Catholic Church had been against loaning money since forever, and that was their main gripe with the Jewish community, was that the Jewish community was willing to lend money for interest, and the Catholics called that usury. But now the Knights Templar were going to be bankers. So I guess it's okay if it's God's bank. Like, you can borrow money and pay interest to God's bank. That's okay. So they would lend money to powerful Catholic men. Not poor Catholic men, because they're not trying to help anyone get a leg up. They're just like, oh, you're a king. Here's some money. Pay me back a little bit extra and give me a favor.
Right, right.
And one of those men that they lent money to was King Philip IV. He owed the Knights Templar turned bankers quite a lot of money. He was heavily in debt to them with the Kingdom of France. And now, luckily enough for him though, his investigators suspected that the Knights Templar were up to no good. Or he didn't want to pay his bills, and he was like, find a crime that they're guilty of.
I'm kind of inclined to think it was probably the latter.
Yeah, yeah. And he was looking for a way out of those bills. So on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, King Philip had the Knights Templar all over France simultaneously arrested. Because he didn't want to be able to, like, help each other. So, all at the same time. And I wrote, it was very Machiavellian, and this was 200 years before Machiavelli wrote The Prince. So, King Philip was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
He had never read The Prince. It wouldn't exist till long after his death. So the Knights Templar were arrested, and they were tortured. And normally, the Pope is the only one above the Templars. That's how it's always been through all of history. And in any other time, the Pope would have threatened the French king with excommunication for arresting and torturing the knights. He would have been like, well, if you're going to do that, then you're a bad Catholic and you're out. But this Pope didn't. The Pope said Philip could do what Philip felt he needed to do as long as he stayed loyal to the papacy. So the Pope was kind of King Philip's bitch. He just kind of said, oh, this doesn't feel like it's my problem. That's a French issue. I'll let King Philip deal with it. King Philip spent the next 7 years investigating the knights and proceeded to burn them at the stake for all kinds of heresy that they had confessed to while they were being tortured. They had confessed all this heresy while they were being tortured, and now they were going to get burned at the stake for it. In March 1314, 7 years after the knights were arrested and the last knight was burned at the stake, Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the temple, was burned. They saved him for last, and reports state that as he was burned, the Grand Master cursed those responsible for the betrayal of the Knights Templar. Specifically, he cursed King Philip down to the 13th generation. You know the drill. Part 2 is on Patreon, and the link for Patreon is in the show description. See you there.
Will be remembered.
Thanks for listening.